How long we talk?
Still haven't participated. Well, I will talk to you. I don't know if it's gotten her or not, because her son tested positive for COVID last Thursday. So she has been out on quarantine, she should be back tomorrow, because he was in the last. Well, he had to get tested to go back to school.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Happy New Year. Don't sound so enthusiastic. Happy New Year. I'd like to call our first meeting of the new year, a regular meeting, Sumter County Council for Tuesday, January 12th, to order. Ms. B, are there any changes, adjustments to the agenda?
No, sir, there are no changes.
Okay. Ms. B, would you please give us an invocation? And then we all stand.
Let us pray. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for bringing us together for this first meeting of the County Council for 2021. We thank you for sparing our lives and for bringing us safely, and that sparing us of illnesses and everything. And as we conduct this meeting, we invite your presence and ask that you help us to make decisions that are pleasing in your sight. We ask your blessings upon every council member, and we ask your blessings upon this nation, and we ask that you give us peace, love, civility, and forgiveness in the name of the one that we celebrated just a few weeks ago, the one that we
For which it stands, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we approve tonight's agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is approved. Have a motion to approve our minutes from our regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we approve our minutes from our meeting of Tuesday, December 8th. All in favor?
Aye.
At this point, I now declare all offices open. The floor is open for nominations.
Chairman, Chairman?
The chairman.
I nominate Jim McCain.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Ms. Council Lady McGaney.
We have a motion and a second for Jim McCain, and we have a motion for Ms. Vivian McGaney.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. So in order, all in favor of Jim McCain being chairman, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? We have a second motion on the floor. Ms. Vivian McGaney, all in favor of Ms. McGaney being chairman, please say aye. Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I think I heard that once you get a majority vote, and that's it. And so I didn't see the show of hands, but I think I heard it audibly.
Well, just to be sure, all in favor of Jim McCain being main chairman, please raise your hand.
Aye.
That's 4, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate, Jimmy Byrd for vice chair.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Jimmy Byrd remain as vice chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Councilor McKinney for vice chair.
It's been moved and, well,
It's a motion, it doesn't require, it's a nomination that doesn't require a second.
all right. All in favor of Jimmy Byrd remaining vice chair, please raise your hand.
That's majority.
Okay. Land use matters.
Mr. Chairman, if you ask for anyone who oppose Mr. Byrd being vice chair,
Okay, well, all those opposed?
I oppose. There's no way I can support someone who does not support our public schools and does not support veterans. I'm opposed to that nomination.
Okay, so noted.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I can be recognized, one other issue before we start with the presentation. And it may not be the appropriate time, but if it is not,
Yes.
Let's check, I did not.
Is that better? Is that better? Mr. Chairman, it may not be the appropriate time, but when it is, you'll alert me. When we adjourn today, I'd like to adjourn in honor of Miss Wilhelmina Scott, who is the wife of Reverend Otis Scott, who served on Sumter County Council in District 1, which is the same seat that I serve, and she happens to be my aunt. So at the appropriate time, I'd like to offer that motion.
Mr. Attorney, would you please give me some guidance on that?
Mr. Chairman, when it comes time to adjourn the meeting, you might want to call on Councilman Washington for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All right. Ms. Rubin.
Good evening, Helen Rickman for planning staff. We have one land use item on the agenda this evening, that's RZ 2016 at 475 Myrtle Beach Highway. This is a request being brought by Brown Investments of Sumter LLC as the property owner to rezone approximately 7 acres from light industrial warehouse to heavy industrial. The property that you see is the entire 7 acres. It's just north and west of the existing business that the Brown Investments has currently occupying. The smaller square that you see where the automobiles are is their existing business location, and they're wanting to expand onto this larger tract. As by way of background, they're actually requesting this rezoning to resolve an active enforcement issue that was initiated. There was site work, including tree removal and other things on that larger 7 acres to expand their existing used auto parts sales business, which is now a non-conforming use in the LIW district. They established that use on their smaller tract prior to the zoning ordinance changing. You may recall, probably 2 or 3 years ago, County Council changed the zoning and development standards ordinance to remove used auto part sales from the light industrial zoning district in tandem with expansion of an existing use down the street, because it bears a striking resemblance to an automotive junkyard. They would like to expand their existing non-conforming business onto this larger tract, and the only zoning district in the county that allows it is heavy industrial, and that is what the auspices is to request today, is to rezone the property so that they can legally expand their existing use. As you can see, this property itself is zoned light industrial warehouse, as is everything around it on the north side of the property. To the south, across the street, we have residential zoning. The property itself is in the suburban development planning area and also influenced by a priority commercial mixed-use node. Commercial mixed-use nodes are identified on the map to direct future high-quality commercial development, as well as residential mixed-use development. These locations encourage both destination retail as well as other community supporting uses where design and access and all of those things are reviewed in a manner to help encourage the appearance of the area and really to serve in a more commercial capacity where we don't have outdoor storage uses and things that would be commonly associated with industrial uses. This is some site photos, which you see on the left side of the screen is what the site looked like before the land was cleared. The right is how it appears today. When they initially did the land clearing, we were under the assumption that it was actually a timbering operation, and then it sat vacant for a few years before they started moving cars onto the property. And that's really kind of how we got to where we are today. After going through the Planning Commission process, Planning Commission does recommend denial of the request. They are of the opinion that rezoning this property to an industrial designation such as heavy industrial is not consistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan, as this is a commercial mixed-use area. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hill.
the 7-acre tract is the portion that they cleared.
Yes, sir.
That's right. The other piece, the existing piece, is light industrial. Are they requesting to rezone it heavy also?
No, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
So their grandfathers be the one to have.
They're grandfathered where they're at, but they cannot expand onto new property because it's a non-conforming use of record.
Mr. Chairman, did we address this years ago? It seemed like I remember something about this. Or was it another?
Not this property.
It was
On the
another.
other side of the road, about a quarter mile down, it was the Baker Sales dealing with,
Well, basically what they're doing, there's a junkyard in the back there, and it has to go in heavy industrial.
fundamentally this.
Move approval first reading, right here with public schools.
It's been properly moved. Did I hear a second?
Yes.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve first reading on RZ 2016. Any discussion? All in favor of first reading for RZ 2016, please say aye. All opposed? First reading for RZ 2016 is approved. Mr. Attorney?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have before you a resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee and tax agreement. This is just a resolution which addresses just the broadest parts of the agreement, which will come before you later in an ordinance to approve the actual fee and lieu tax agreement. But this resolution just sets forth the basic terms, which will be a 6% separate ratio, and millage which will adjust every 5 years. It'll be a 30-year deal. There'll be a special social revenue credit for 10 years with 5%. Those are the basic terms that you will see when you actually look at the fee and lieu tax agreement and the ordinance to approve that agreement. We'd like to take any questions you want to ask about the resolution.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we have first reading on resolution number 2101. Any discussion? Hearing one, all in favor? All opposed? The resolution 2101 is approved. We have on the agenda, first reading for 21-942, but as I understand it, we want to defer that.
Move for deferral. Second.
Yes, sir. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we defer first reading of 21-942. Any discussion? All in favor of deferral? All opposed? It is deferred. Going down to committee reports, any reports from council members, other meetings, trainings, and conferences?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you. I would like to report on the minutes or the meeting that I attended in December through the Veterans Upward Bound program, which is held every month. We have what we call a vet talk, where we have veterans coming in and talking about problems that they are having and encountering. A lot of the veterans are very afraid of going out in public because a lot of people are not wearing masks, and a lot of these veterans are at high risk because they have a lot of underlying conditions. When they talked about that, I decided to do some research on my own because I was curious about the number of veterans that are dying in Sumter County, and that there's no record of actually how many veterans are dying. So I decided to use as a source the Sumter Item obituary page, which I began to review. And as I reviewed it, I began to notice that a lot of veterans were dying, people who had served in Vietnam, the Army, and so forth. And I just like to make sure that I put this in the record, that the COVID virus pandemic has impacted everyone. Veterans have not been spared from the virus. As of 22 December 2002, the Veteran Affairs reported 142,511 confirmed COVID-19 cases with 6,192 deaths. The mortality rate is higher than the national mortality rate. These figures do not take into account veterans not receiving services through VA or whose deaths are not being counted by VA. And one of the reasons why these vets are scared, because one of the reasons veterans may see more fatalities during the pandemic is because of age. Nearly 50% of veterans are 65 or older, which put them at a greater risk of severe illness or death due to COVID-19. Additionally, many veterans are at a high risk of respiratory illnesses due to the environments and toxins they were exposed to while on active duty, which placed them in a high risk group for COVID-19. Veterans who served during the Vietnam era, as myself, who were stationed in Vietnam or Thailand, were exposed to a herbicide called Agent Orange. Most of these veterans contacted one or more of the 14 Agent Orange related illnesses, which includes ischemic heart disease, prostate cancer, type 2 diabetes, respiratory cancer, and Parkinson and Hodgkin's disease. I have contracted ischemic heart disease, requiring triple bypass surgery, prostate cancer, which was required treatment, as well as I'm being treated for diabetes. According to the U.S. Census, Sumter has the highest percent of veterans total population. Many veterans live in Sumter County because of Shaw Air Force Base. Conversely, as of January 9, 2021, we have had over 6,172 confirmed cases in Sumter and 115 deaths. So as I said, I started looking at the item and looking at the obituary, and between the time of December the 8th and January the 11th, there were a total number of 26 people who died that were veterans. Their race was mostly white males, 18, black males, 8. Age range 30 to 91, average age 72. Most branches of service was Air Force 12, Army 7, Navy 1, 2 Coast Guards. We had some notable vets that died. We had a very young veteran named James Main, who was age 31. He was Army, and he died as a result of exposure during the Gulf War. And we had another veteran, Hubert Osteen Jr., age 84, United States Air Force, who served in Vietnam. And we had an older veteran, portable guy who was 98, Army, who served in World War II. So I'm saying this because I know that come January 20, that the new Commander-in-Chief will have a mask mandate that he will put in place for all federal installations and so forth. And I'm hoping that, again, based on the number of veterans that are dying in this county, based on a high population of veterans in this county, that this body, this council, pass a mask mandate that is similar to the mandate that the city of Sumter has. By not doing that, by not having a mask mandate, based on the fact that veterans are dying at a high rate, based on the fact that we have a high population of veterans, I can't help but get the feeling that this body, and excuse my language, do not give a damn about veterans and do not give a damn about whether they live or die. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I'd like to report that today I had the opportunity to meet with Miss Alyssa Richardson, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Senator Tim Scott. She was here in Sumter along with 2 other of his staff members just to see what was going on in Sumter. We met at the Economic Development Building. I had the occasion to present a timeline to her of from 2015 when our dam broke to now where FEMA has denied Sumter County the funds that we use to replace that dam. She's going to take that back to Washington to see what they can do about replacing that $1.2 million that we spent on refurbishing that plant. Now I'd like to take the opportunity, if you don't mind, Mr. Washington. Since we had a virtual swearing-in ceremony and normally do this then, I've got your official Sumter County pin that I would like to. I'd be honored that you can. Okay, sir. I want to lose this thing with gold. If I lose it, Ms. Blandon will make me pay for it. I should have Ms. Blandon. There you go, Carl. Thank you. Welcome to Sumter County. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And this is the box.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I could piggyback for a moment on your and Councilman Bates' comments, I did not anticipate this discussion coming up today, but veterans are very near and dear to my heart. I am a veteran, and I am aware that our executive director has been recognized as one of the top executive directors in the state. In fact, last year, I think she was the top executive director. And I sort of followed her request to council about additional help so that she could make sure that she serviced all of our veterans in the area. From what I understand, there were about 3,000 veterans who were not serviced. It is one of my goals to make sure that her office has what she needs to service our veterans. And of course, like any situation, the first question that comes up is, well, how are we gonna pay for it? So I have some ideas about that when the time is right. I am just advising council that that is an area and an interest that I have, and I feel like it is a basic service. And I think that as a council, we have to get back to basic services. And that's what government was established for, to provide basic services to our citizenry. And so I would ask all of you for your help in making sure that we're able to secure what the Veterans Department needs to be successful. Thank you for allowing me to make those comments.
Thank you, sir. Monthly reports, Ms. Brandon.
Council members, in your packet, you should see the zoning board. Clicking on it, but not getting it up there. But anyway, the zoning, there it is, in front of me. The zoning board of appeals is going to be Wednesday, January 13th, and if anyone have any questions about those items, I'm sure you could check with Ms. Woodman before you all leave tonight. Next, this was mentioned earlier tonight. The Economic Development School will be coming up, and anyone that's interested in it, please let me know. These classes now, you have to pass a test before you can get your certificate. So anyone interested, let me know. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. Mixon.
Mr. Chair, council members, good evening. Two items. First, I'd like to follow up with the information that we've been doing for the last couple of months, the COVID report. Per Mr. Bacon's request, we changed the format slightly, trying to add some more of the totals to the chart as opposed to just 2-week reports, but I wanted to also include the 2-week report because I think it gives us some timely information. What we have in this format, and I believe it's in your packet, that information has been provided by our clerk. The information that you have tonight has been provided primarily from Ms. Rudman, who has been following this information directly from DHEC. So the numbers were shifting from more of a local perspective that we have been getting from DHEC's daily reports, and also supplemented by the coroner's office with the deaths. But now we're moving to this information. It is a standard format, and we tried to put it this way so we can understand. So anyway, so a lot goes into getting this information, and if it's okay with the chairman and council, I would like for Mr. Rubin to spend just a couple of moments to explain how the chart information is derived. And if he could be so kind.
Let's see if I can make this as clear as possible. The DHEC reports confirmed and suspected deaths on a daily basis, but they're approximately 48 hours behind. So today's information won't be posted until 2 days from now, which is why we have the report from the previous Friday, because that's the most current information that we can get in time for you. They actually report their numbers both in raw data, and they also provide a dashboard that gives you the state percentages and county percentages for age cohorts based on numbers of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. They use a variety of ethnic information, which is about 5 different classifications. For our purposes, we've broken it down into black, white, and other, which the other is the grouping of everything else other than Caucasian and African American. And they report their information in 10-year age cohorts, but we have broken it down into these smaller cohorts just because it's more relevant. They do not report any information for any cohort where there is 5 or fewer deaths. So that is why you won't necessarily see all of these numbers adding up together. Also, from one sheet to another sheet, they will One place they'll report suspected and confirmed information all combined together, and another place they'll only use confirmed information. So we have both the confirmed deaths as well as the expected and confirmed deaths. Usually, the suspected deaths are deaths that they're fairly certain are COVID deaths, but they haven't had the test results come back yet, so they don't report it as necessarily a COVID death yet. So that's why there is a disparity between the confirmed and suspected deaths. They also will give you their age breakdowns of their the information about how the oldest person is, the youngest person, and then the average of the median age for people who are either hospitalized, have died, or currently have been confirmed infected. So we did provide that, the age information for the deaths, just to give you an idea of the fact that in Suffolk County, the youngest person that has died to date is 23, the oldest is 103. But the average age of the individuals that are dying are actually in their 70s. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about this. We have about 12 spreadsheets that feed all into this to get this information, which I can provide to you guys if you want me to, but.
Ms. Rubin, I noticed that the information for veterans is left, at least on this sheet, is left blank.
DHEC does not report veteran deaths. They are only reporting the deaths of an individual regardless of their background information, because especially at the county level, information that can be used to identify a single individual is usually suppressed. And so to get the veteran's death information, that will have to come from the local coroner's office. So those numbers won't necessarily match with the numbers that DHEC reports. Also, you may notice a disparity in the numbers that they don't all necessarily add up to each other, because DHEC is actually reporting percentages that I then go turn around and convert back into whole numbers.
Okay, this report looks good, but Mr. Mixon, is there any kind of way that you can get with our coroner to at least try and come up with the number of veterans during that 2-week period? Because that's what Mr. Baton's interest is.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, that's a very good question. I have already reached out to the coroner. Again, the numbers may not align with DHEC as far as the totals. What he can do, based on the deaths that he reports, he has information that can identify a veteran or non-veteran. And what he's reported for the last 2 weeks are 3 veterans have passed. All 3 were white males, and all 3 above the age of 60. So that what I will do each report is get that information from the coroner. I've also asked him if he can research his previous data to determine a total number. Mr. Baton, I think that was another number you were driving to. He's going to try to research that through his staff and see if they can determine that. So we'll have that figure to base it off, and then we can just add based on the information he provides. So we're working toward that number, but one that we could sustain with the information provided to us on a regular basis from DHEC. I want to thank Helen for her involvement in this. This really doesn't necessarily fall into the category of our planning director, but this is something that she's very interested in and has the information available and is able to plug these numbers into her spreadsheet that she's developed. So kudos to her for her work, and thank you for sharing that with us. And we've got it scheduled again for her to provide that to us on Monday mornings prior to the council meeting, so Ms. Blaney can put it in your sheets, your reports.
Gary, is the county going to be involved any with the shots, or is it all done through medical areas? Will provide areas for shots, or has any of that stuff been?
That's one of the other things I was going to put on the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's perfect timing, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Helen. The vaccines, there's been a lot of misinformation and poor communication, I should say, as far as how they will roll out across the state of South Carolina, maybe the country, but we've been dealing with it on the state level. As you know, there's categories of folks that are eligible to receive the vaccine in a particular order. The first being the 1A category, which was all the health providers, medical and health providers, which included our EMS staff. So they would be categorized in the 1A category. We had previously made arrangements with McLeod in the Sumter area to perform that actually yesterday when we were supposed to get the vaccines for those folks. That didn't work out because McLeod got shorted the number of vaccines that they were supposed to receive. So fortunately, we were able to make arrangements with Toomey Hospital and they were able to get those shots. So Toomey is now providing the vaccines, and I believe we've already accomplished all our 1A category. Their next process, of course, is to move to the 1B, which would include law enforcement, fire, and other first responders for the county. Some folks work through McLeod. They actually called us last week and said, hey, if you got folks that want the shot now, send them over on a walk-in basis. We'll accept them. So we had some law enforcement, some fire folks that actually went over there and have already received the vaccine. But the way it's supposed to work, according to DHEC and South Carolina Emergency Management Division, we're supposed to provide them with the names. Once those categories open up, we provide them with a name, and then they actually go on. They will register you online. I think it's called the FAN system. And then that system, that computerized system, they'll reach out to you, get a little bit more information personally, and then schedule you a time to actually come in and get shot. So that's working through the different levels that's going to open up. What we haven't determined yet, and what we're trying to get through the state, is how, and you have to be a provider, identified, certified provider to perform the shots. What we haven't determined yet is what level the public, or for that matter, our employees, is what we're specifically interested in right now. At what point will we be able to get it out to the mainframe of the county employees? And can we treat it like a flu shot, where we actually have one of the providers like CVS or Walgreens, and we would set them up at the Civic Center and let people sign up that want the flu, like they did the flu shot, sign up and come in a scheduled time and get the flu shot, you get the COVID shot. We're working through all that right now. They just haven't, at the state level, have not determined how they're going to start rolling out that level of vaccines. Many of you probably already know that tomorrow morning, folks 70 years old and older can actually go on and register and get in line for the shots. What they believe they have already accomplished is all the 1As, many of the 1Bs, and they're ready to move into the 70-year-olds to cover it, because these vaccines are time sensitive, as we all know, so they have to deliver those shots. They want to make sure that they've got a good list before they actually start bringing these vaccines in. So I know it's a lot of information. We're still daily having this conversation with the state, trying to determine what the next level will be, but certainly we're concerned about first and foremost getting those folks that are in the first line, if you want to call that, make sure they have access to it. It's voluntary to get the vaccine. It's not mandatory. And we've had a mixed number, I would say. I would hope that the number would be a little higher, but I think for the most part, people are still a little resistant right now and waiting to see how these first shots roll out, vaccines roll out for everybody else. So,
Are they providing shots at the VA?
at the hospital, what's that?
Yeah, at the veteran. I mean, don't we have a local
We
area
have a
here?
local clinic, but I haven't heard anything.
Seems like that would
call them tomorrow.
If you were over 70 and you're a veteran, you ought to be able to go in there and get
That's
shot.
why I said I'm interested in.
I've not heard who will be able to, again, be the provider for that. The real issue with vaccine, of course, is the storage of the vaccine. And there's very few places that can actually store large volumes of the vaccine, so there will be fairly limited on who can do that initially. But as it rolls out and as they start getting into the other vaccines where it's not quite as critical, then I think you'll probably see it open up.
Are they administering the other vaccines yet?
I'm only aware of the Pfizer. I'm not aware of
That's the one that has to be kept at 90 below or whatever.
And whatever one you get the first time, you have to get the second time. I've been told.
You can't get one from one company.
Right. Again, a lot of information. I'm sure we'll be rolling out, but unfortunately, we're listening, of course, to DHEC for good direction from the state, as well as South Carolina Emergency Management Division, and they're working closely with DHEC and then giving us some guidelines to go by as how we would gain access to that vaccine. One last item, if it's okay, Mr. Chair. I think a lot of you have been getting a lot of phone calls. I know we have here in the administration building on this issue about litter. Many of you have been in Sumter for many, many years and probably would agree with me in stating that I don't believe I've ever seen litter as bad as it is in Sumter as it is right now. I don't know the answer as to why. I've got a theory, and that may hold up, is that, you know, a lot of people now aren't able to dine in, so they're getting takeout. And unfortunately, when they get to takeout, they're going right down the road. When they finish, they're going out the road. Certainly a large dividing line anyway, but that's just, I'm sure that's just a part of it. But I've never in my lifetime here something seemed to live quite like this. But as you know, this is a topic that we've been discussing for a little while. I think we may have gotten sidetracked with COVID. I think we were starting to make some efforts prior to that hitting, and of course that kind of blew everything up. But that being said, I would like to discuss a strategy, if you would, on how we move forward. I've asked Jonathan, our attorney, for direction from a council member that we develop a ordinance that would allow us to have a joint advisory committee with the city of Sumter. And I've already spoken with the city manager. It's not gone through the process with the city yet, but certainly they're on board. They're agreeable to the concept. So by the next meeting on January the 26th, we would present to council a draft of the ordinance that would allow us to form this joint advisory committee. Many of you, Mr. Eaves, I know, have actually been sitting on another committee that's been in place, a volunteer committee, I guess would probably be the best way to say that, Mr. Eaves. They have a lot of folks that are very passionate about this and very excited and interested in doing something. We just need to get that momentum to move it forward. So we believe that we could form this committee. It would be, again, an advisory committee to both the councils. It would help give us direction, or possibly establish some priorities of how we move forward. I think it's important to get the voice of the public, but it also generates some interest, I think, from the public if they're engaged and involved, as we all know. So again, January 26th, we have that ordinance for first reading.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, piggyback on county administrator's comments. He is exactly right about the litter. And in the rural area, it's a little bit worse than it is in the city limits, primarily because the rural areas do not have trash pickup. And so people take their trash to the trash dump, and a lot of times it sort of falls off trash cans and so forth. But this whole notion that litter cannot be controlled is just a false notion. There are communities in our state right now that are addressing litter successfully. Orangeburg and Greenville both have what's called litter trucks. One of the trucks has a rake on the end. The truck drives down the street, rakes the litter in onto a conveyor belt and drops it in a bin. The other one, it's also a truck, has a vacuum on the end, and it vacuums the trash from the side of the road again into a bin. They have had major success with addressing the litter issues. They've had so much success that other communities are now seeking them out and visiting with them to figure out how they can do the same thing. The other thing that I'm interested in doing, and I've had some conversation with the solicitor and the sheriff about it, I'd like to create a scenario where nonviolent offenders could work off any issues they have with law enforcement by picking up trash in a trash cube in specific areas. There are even programs online where there are rewards for people who assist in the process. So there are a number of things that we can do. And if it's council's pleasure, after I visit with the solicitor and the sheriff, I'm happy to come back and give you a report on that. But I'd like for us to explore the litter truck. Now, litter truck is a little bit expensive. From what I understand, it's about $400,000. But this is an issue that we can partner with the city on. There are other ways to fund this. The state of South Carolina has $1 billion in unrestricted revenue this year. If we can send $2 million back to Sumter or a tennis center, we can certainly spend $500,000 on a litter truck to clean up our community. I think Artie and I both got an email from a constituent who talked about trash at all the entrances to Show Air Force Base. And that is something that we must address. Again, this is a basic service that government should be performing. And it's something that I'm very interested in, and at the appropriate time, I'd like to work with the county administrator on bringing some proposals to council to consider that.
Yeah, thank you, that's very good information. And it's very similar to what I've just plugged in. On February the 9th, we would have second reading and public hearing on this, so we can actually get all folks involved and interested, hopefully, in this effort. February 16th, that's when we would suggest that the city would have a first reading on it, on their ordinance, followed by February 23rd would be the county council's third reading on the ordinance. And then March the 2nd, city council would have their second and final reading on that ordinance, is what would be proposed. And I say all that and giving you all these timelines so that by April 13th would be our goal to have that committee confirmed and in place with the county and the city, which would be just in time for the budget process, which I think is going to be important. You mentioned the $400,000, but we're familiar with a couple of pieces of apparatus that you've mentioned. Yes, it's going to be very costly, but another part of that, of course, is we have to have operators for that to be functional and effective. But the idea would be to have this advisory committee that we can work through and listen through, that they could actually prioritize how we might approach it. And I'll try to wrap this up. I view this as really, this is a three-legged stool, and it won't stand by itself. The first part is the cleanup. We've got to have that. We've got too much in our community. We've got to figure out a way to address that. The second part is the enforcement piece. You mentioned the court systems, working with the sheriff, and certainly we've got to have the support of the summary court and magistrate judges when it comes to fining folks. That's been something that's not been effective. But as y'all know, we've got the prima facie issue that we still have to address. Mr. Bryan's already reached out to Senator McElveen and to Representative Weeks to possibly co-sponsor bills over in Columbia that would allow us to get that back support that we need from the state to really address it from a legal perspective. And we know that they're being done in other areas, but this top cover is something I think that Jonathan's really interested in. But again, without getting into too many details, that's the second leg. And of course, the third piece, which is the most difficult, but it won't happen without the first and second piece, is we've got to change the culture in our community where it's accepted to throw trash at you. I mean, we've really got to get in behind this. We've got to change people's attitudes, and that's what you mentioned earlier. Councilman Washington, you've got to figure out a way to do that. So I think there's three parts to this, and you have to have all three parts working. But I think if we get the excitement, get the passion about it that we need, we can move this thing forward. It's going to cost us a little bit, and there should be some other partners. The state of South Carolina, if you look at the road system, where most of this trash is state roads. And so, I mean, there got to be a player in this too. We just got to figure out how to attack that. But it should be just the county. It should be just the city. It's got to be all of us working together from the government side as well as the public side to make this an interest. But I know there's a lot of information, probably more than I probably should have covered tonight. But I wanted to let the council know that this is moving. It's building on what was already built in the past, but moving it forward, and I think this is the direction we need to go. And more information will follow.
Who's gonna be on that advisory?
Well, that's part of the discussion.
I know you got county and you got city, or is the public we're gonna have public?
We're looking for those to be public members, not council members.
Okay.
We're looking for appointments like we do with our other committees and boards.
So the council and the city would
appoint members.
Appoint members to that advisory.
It may be 4 from each, or 5 and 4 to make it a number, but that's something we'll work through and bring back to council. But yeah, that would be done. And Mr. Eden, I know that y'all already had a lot of discussion about this months ago, but if you want to follow up.
We did propose having one person from city council and one person from county council, ad hoc, no.
Ex officio.
So,
and we did kind of identify certain areas like DOT someone from DOT, someone from the chamber, someone from economic development, some areas like that. And then regular public too, but you don't want to get this committee too big.
So let me just offer, if there is a need for financial assistance, the budget process began officially today in Columbia. So if that's something that we are going to pursue to assist us in funding the litter truck or funding this issue, is something that we probably need to get in front of our legislative delegation, those who serve on Appropriations Committee. And that would be Senator Johnson. I think Senator McElveen will be going on finance this year. And then, of course, Representative Weeks. And then, of course, Representative Smith. But it's probably better to have that conversation sooner than later before they make commitments.
Mr. Chairman, may I add something, please? I'm listening to this and I'm very interested because I live on Myrtle Beach Highway, which is a state road. And God, I hate it when they cut the grass. I'd rather see the grass grow up 2 or 3 feet, because when they cut the grass, they don't pick it up, and then all the litter that's there, and it's a disaster, and it looks bad, and I have to go across the street from my property and rake it up, because when I go to my mailbox, I'm just tired of looking at all that litter. So what is DOT? Because it seems like litter is not a priority to them, because their priority seems to be the roads and filling potholes and so forth, because they don't, once they cut their grass, maybe once a year during the winter or whatever, or twice, that's it. They don't do anything else. So what are we going to do to impact on them to do their job and clean it up, the state roads?
I could address that quickly, and that's what Mr. Eden was talking about. As part of this advisory committee, that's why they recognize that they need to be at the table. They need to hear what's going on. Also, that I'm aware of, the city has already hired a litter control officer. I'm not exactly sure the title, but Mr. Buttons, that person, he's actually been coordinating already with DOT on some of these cuts to try to prevent that very thing from happening. So when they have the opportunity to clean up an area or clean up a road, they want to make sure that DH knows that that's the time to cut it after that. So that effort has already started. I know it's very small, but at least they're engaging in the conversation right now. But certainly not to the degree that we need them to be, and we'll continue to work toward that. That's a very good point, and that is a major problem. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Anything else from council?
No, I'm fine. Yeah, and Gene is right. It's a disaster when they cut those roads. I think years ago, does the state contract that now? And they used to coordinate it. It seems like they'd pick up, the litter would come pick it up, and then they would cut it. But now I think with it being contracted, they just come whenever, and they don't care about the litter out there. They just want to cut it. So yeah, that would be good.
DOT still knows where the contractors are going.
And just for the record, I received some complaints about litter as well. And I spoke with the sheriff's department, and they were helping, but the job is so big until they need more hands to tackle it. So yes, it's indeed a problem. Something has to happen.
Anything else from council?
Exactly.
I'm good.
All minds and hearts are clear. Mr. Washington, if you will adjourn us.
Did you want to do something, Councilman Washington, for Ms. Scott? Did you want to?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, as you know, Ms. Scott passed recently. She was 98 years old, lived a long life. She was my favorite aunt, and served as a Sumter County School District. I think she retired after 37 years. And her husband, Otis Scott, my uncle, served on county council in this very same district. We lost her about a week and a half ago. And so if it's appropriate and unopposed, I'd like for us to adjourn in her honor today. I do plan to ask Senator McElveen to do a subsequent resolution, and I'll of course include council on that.
Absolutely. Second.
Okay. We adjourn in her honor.